Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here to discuss True Detective Season 1, Episode 2 with my friend Chris Mohan. Chris, how you doing today?
I am having a fun-packed and adventure-filled day. I'm only in from work about an hour, maybe, and I've had dinner, so I haven't done much else other than do that since I got home. I don't know how's your day been.
Same, I just got home. So,
Cool,
same thing,
cool.
yeah. So, Episode 2, I'm going to try and be careful because I've seen the series and you haven't seen it yet, but
hmm
you said you have lots of notes. What were your thoughts on this episode?
So my thoughts were that I have lots of notes insofar as there are a lot of those when you're trying to tell a narrative story and you're maybe trying to give hints, do some foreshadowing, do some hints that are there, you kind of leave things hanging in the air a lot. So there's lots of words and sentences said that you go, oh, that sounds possibly important. That seems out of place and lingering on that line, or a shot that they linger on, or something to that effect. And you're like, ah, or why is nobody talking about that? The showing, or lots of that stuff sort of coming. So it kind of worked through chronologically, and most of my notes are very much, oh, is that something? Is that something? And some of them are more prominent than other ones. I think that's probably fair to say. Uh, I would link it back actually to one of the things that we talked about last week, which was our opinions of our two main characters of Rust and Marty, about
Hmm.
who we sympathize, who we like,
Yeah.
because I think the second episode changes that dynamic a lot in terms
Hmm.
of our sympathies and what we think of each character and what they're capable of, quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I'll hit the headline one. So it's very clear that Cole can be a violent person, which is not something that we really seen in the first episode at all, I don't think.
Hmm.
So far that he's dangerous. In fact, almost to the point that they plant the seed that he could be the killer. I've seen an awful lot of criminal minds over the years to kind of say there is a profile of a person that does this kind of crime, and he sort of fits it. If that was to be convinced. So, but also he's investigating this. He's investigating this rather hard, unless he wants to get caught and stuff. So, but there is that kind of thing that there's a violent streak in him that doesn't actually seem to be in Marty. You think
Hmm.
of all Marty's negative traits from the first episode, and you don't see, Cole's or Rust's in the first episode, but we see have that kind of flip flopped and reversed, and we get a whole new set of poor traits probably in Marty. I think it's probably fair to say.
Yeah, Rust, I think he goes from being kind of an oddball to being potentially dangerous
hmm
because he talks about how his time undercover and how he killed people and how he ended up on this task force that's like sealed file task force.
Yeah, that whole bit's fascinating. Actually, I had a lot section, and I had to rewatch that again of actually how he ended up in this task force. Like some really strange phrases, such as a couple of guys owe me a few favors, and rather than locking me up for killing all these people, I kind of went, "Could I work on homicide?" Like,
Well, I think they
uh,
even offered him like a pension. Like they even
yeah,
offered like right off in the sunset, and he said no, he wants to keep working.
keep working on homicide. So he was rewarded for killing a lot of people with investigating murders. And yeah, it interesting outcome, especially when it comes back around to him being visited by the captain and basically saying nobody wants you here.
Yeah,
This is you're only here by Marty's good grace and Marty's good name. You're a waste of space, and honestly, we're not going to take you seriously. Which then causes that thing of, well, what do you think, Marty? And actually, you get the sense of actually Marty being a pretty decent cop actually at that stage because there is an easy way out, which you sort of think Marty's going to take, but he doesn't take the easy way out. He kind of
hmm.
says, "No, we're going to investigate this. I think there's something in this."
I kind of wondered if he does that um to keep Rust around because he thinks he can help
Hmm.
him. If he feels like he's a superior detective, so he wants to keep him around, and he wants part of the glory that can come with it, or is it loyalty? Because I don't know, is Marty loyal? I mean, is he's not loyal to his wife, but is he loyal
Wife.
to his partner?
No, definitely not. But it is an interesting dynamic because, again, I think back to the first episode, and one of the things that Marty says, like even very early doors, he recognized that Rust was good police. He
Mhm.
was a talented detective, and that he knew what he was doing. And for all of the boys' attitude that Marty kind of gives off, I think actually at the heart of it, he sees himself as good police as well, regardless of whether he sees that as his goal and not somebody that's just collecting a paycheck and getting an easy way out and doing whatever he does on the side in and around his life. So yeah, I thought that whole dynamic of investigation of Marty is a really, I mean, they're both very flawed characters, but Marty is kind of, I would say, a more recognizable to me flawed character, and not the kind of, oh, I just happened to have murdered a couple of people in the past, and child was killed, by a car, and wife me didn't really work out after that, and like, very very damaged as he is, as opposed to Marty that's maybe doing the damage in some ways to his family.
Yeah, I
So,
wanna talk about that here in a second, but I want to say hi to Aaron. Hi, Stephen
oh
Chris.
yeah,
Looking forward to the episode 2 chat. Aaron, did you skip ahead? Because you were trying to not binge. You were resisting the urge. Let us know if you skipped. But I found it fascinating that Marty, after all this time, after all these years removed, if he still has this justification for what he did. He still it's best for the family because I have to relieve this stress. I can't bring it home with me. I have to find my release somewhere else.
yeah. I think that's a very commonly held theme. I mean, we were talking about it last night, but I've just done a lesson on of mice and men, and actually of the migratory nature of men across America. When they work hard, they reward themselves not by saving and hoarding the money. They blow off steam in lots of different
Mm.
ways, and waste the money or waste the time that they have. And I think that can be applied directly here as well.
Oh,
Marty kind of
interesting.
feels that he is, because of the stress that he's under, and like that whole scene with his wife later on pretty much confirms that, is that he feels he's rhyme and reason actually for doing what he's doing. Because have you seen the stuff I have to deal with in work? I mean, in order to be a functioning father or something, I have to do these things, is really what he's saying. And she kind of says your lack of self-awareness is almost
Yeah. Yeah, he's different. Aaron says, I agree. At the moment, it feels like he is a talented detective, though there's a stereotype of loyalty to the partner between cops is the reason. And Aaron has been good and have only watched episode 2. I'm impressed. I thought you were going to skip ahead.
I have to say, when I got to the end of episode 2, I don't know whether it's because of how I'm doing it, but it was hard not to go on ahead and kind of delve further um, and explore and get to. But I think the serialized nature of this means that it is nice to ruminate for a few days and
Yeah.
kind of use these discussions productively to kind of air my feelings out loud and be spectacularly wrong, or be hopefully proven right for one tiny scrub of that comes along. I'll say, see, I predicted it. Amongst the 30 things I predicted in that chat, one of them came true.
Yeah, definitely. Massive willpower required. Yeah. Yeah. The scene with the one scene that I thought Marty had a point was when he's with his father-in-law and they're in the backyard and he's
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, well, back in my day, everything was perfect." And he tells him something to the effect of, every old person says that to the next about the last generation, which is kind of true. I mean, we've all done it, right? We all heard it.
Well, everybody romanticizes the past,
Mm.
regardless of what happens. The nostalgia, it's the often say in Britain, the nostalgia for people who desperately sort of want to live in war times is something to behold. The celebration of hardship, and that we survived through it, so you can survive through this kind of what is easy time. I think this happens quite a bit throughout all society. Not just modern society. I thought that scene with the father-in-law and the mother-in-law, again, there's a lot of things in there that I find really fascinating. I mean, obviously, parents know that there's problems with their marriage; they can sense it, which I think ultimately leads to, Marty's feeling of isolation around that.
Mm.
But again, this kind of iconography of Deep South America, the back garden has a big, massive stars and stripes on a pole as they walk at their back garden. Like, this is, I don't know if those things are kind of that commonplace, or whether it is very much an iconography of remind you where this is set, and the kind of the traditional nature of that area.
There are parts of the country that are very patriotic. So
Yeah.
there are pockets, and there's some places that do have the big flags, and it's a beautiful backyard though. The little
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean beautiful. I mean, what a nice backyard. That's the that's the one thing that I was like, oh man, I'd love to have that kind of
I was
backyard.
gonna say that wasn't like you didn't think, oh, it's just like ours. It's they could have shot
Oh
that
no,
in ours.
I'm in the desert. We don't have that kind of shit. No,
I have a cousin that
no.
has a backyard like that.
Nice. Yeah, very nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of the Louisiana area. They have lots of that kind of thing. So
There was lots of those lingering shots. Actually, I don't know if I noticed it as much in the first episode, but where something would happen and it would just pan back over the Louisiana Bayou, or otherwise, just kind of cross and just give you the sense and feeling of where you were and about time of the day and all of those things. The kind of beauty of the place.
yeah, I want to talk about that in a second.
Oh yeah,
Aaron says it is interesting that the mother almost blames Maggie. The traditional view may be that the woman has to put up with the man's ways and make it work. That's a great point.
it's a fantastic point. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is, because it is, the onus is on her to make it work, because he's got a hard, again. She's almost losing his argument that he has. Shit, I have to see it work. Like, it's a wonder I'm a functioning individual in some ways. Given everything that happens.
Yeah, not to skip ahead too much, but one of the last shots. I don't know if you
Mm.
noticed this because you had mentioned the background and kind of the panning
Yeah.
when they find that church at the end, and the backdrop of all the steam and the factories and this industrial area versus this strange, like, worn down church. And so you have the contrast of this church and religion and this weird occult possible stuff going on, and then you have this, like, the steam and industrial scene. I mean, huge, like, it fills the whole background.
Yeah, those things are thematically really interesting, because I think the satanic cult nature of this that's floated is sort of like pointing to the past, and then
Hmm.
you have that this whole murder and world that's being presented to us in terms of religious nature, otherwise, is contrast to the day to day nature of the world. Even their office, that kind of like small office, it's the only real sense of modern civilization that we've really got to see in the show.
Hmm.
Everything's been very much set in the countryside, or in and around the beauty of the area that there is. So
And I kind of took that last scene as um that the church is like this hidden thing, this, like, you don't know that it's there, but this church is kind of off to the side and all this weird stuff is going on, but you don't notice it. It's there. Like, it's right next to all these factories and no one knows what's happening, and it's like this mysterious, it's happening right under your nose and you don't see it
yeah,
kind of thing.
well, it's one of those things that I've I've seen friends that kind of go, oh, they do like shots of abandoned factories. And I used to mention, what, you just seem to be surrounded by all these abandoned factories that don't seem to be around me. And I was out for a walk one day and I went, I've just walked past three of these places. You know what I mean? The kind of places that you see every day and that are definitely within your sphere of reference, but you actually don't see them at all. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, these abandoned mills that are from industrial age gone past, that are just, they're shells of themselves. I think
Mhm.
that one of the things about the church that really strikes me is, like, did they build that? Because it is stunningly put together. It's almost like a shipwreck. Actually, when you get inside with the way the roofs come down and the lattice
Mhm.
nature and stuff, and I was like, this feels like it was designed and built for this show, rather than this kind of being sitting out in the middle of wherever it was. But I think
Hmm.
it does go that level of production design that's in this show that kind of seems to elevate it. The extra things that they add in, that they place around, that they use and they do.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
mind blowing.
it's I wonder if they built it or not. I wonder if they
Yeah,
built this for the show, because it does, because they, even when they're driving up there, they mention, they're trying to find it. It's like, I think that might be it way out there in the, so it's this really tucked away building out of the
yeah.
middle of nowhere.
A hell of a location if it's a real thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And echoes Marty's justification for his affair with his mother-in-law. Get such a feel for the old meets new. You can see the more and more why the setting was picked. This story wouldn't have worked in Alley or New York.
I completely agree with that. I mean, there is the sort of mysticism of the location that is again the old with the new,
Mm.
like you exactly say, Aaron. That the possibilities of the old mean that anything could be happening here. You know, if it was set in New York or Chicago or something, you'd be going, no, this has a modern solution. What we think is happening isn't probably happening, but in this case, it's very much a possibility.
Mhm. And the repurpose, maybe I can totally picture it being
That's
real.
that could be a
Could be.
thing where they've added to it or used an existing structure. That could be cool. Yeah.
Be curious to see like a behind the scenes thing and see if it was made for it. Hey, Birdie, glad you can make it. Glad you can make it. So
Good.
also the scene the part of the why it wouldn't work in another setting too is when they go and visit the mom at the beginning when she's sitting in
Mm,
her chair and all her nails are bloody and
the
she's
chemicals.
tortured by what's happened and she blames herself and she's just in this like really bad mental state and the pictures that are there, did you notice the pictures that
I
he looked at?
did. So there's a couple of things I have about that scene. She's obviously a quivering wreck, Dora. I think the bit where she said she was empathizing with the person screaming, "God, that's terrible for the parents," and she realized that she is the person that's suffering there. And every time she asks a question, she doesn't ever answer the question that's asked of her. She skirts around it. But yes, I have strange photo of Dora with men on horseback. Are they KKK? Is it wasn't really quite clear, but they did seem like pointy hats on them.
Mhm.
And the men on horseback. Now, I did pause it, and it's obscured enough so that you don't get a clear indication. Um, but then also in the back of that, whenever she has the distress, starts to get the headache, she starts to pray out loud, very openly, and the faith and religion are such a strong part of her upbringing, which would then indicate that also our murdered girl's upbringing
Mhm.
was of a similar kind of thing, and she has ties to the church, there in religion in some way as well.
Yeah, that was a really because you really got you can during that scene you kind of feel like you're there like the setting and the
That's right.
dim drudgy like this like musty room and it did a great job with you know making it immersive in that scene I thought.
Yeah, and you got a sense of poverty of it, like that this girl had probably lived up in poverty, and the mum was still living
Mm.
in poverty as well. But yes, another one of those kind of lingering kind of shots. Even the one of her fingernails, and the chemicals working away on her. It's like we'll just pause on this a second too long. The photo will pause on it a second too long, just to float those ideas.
Mm.
Not you?
And Erin thought KKK as well. Also hints that her husband was abusive to the daughters.
Oh, yeah. Which would fit with ultimately what became her profession in a lot of ways, and actually subsequently of the other commune that they went and visited. Like, so many fascinating scenes in this. Like plot wise, does much happen in this episode?
Yeah,
Not really,
not really.
but a lot happens in this episode.
Yeah, yeah. I think the when I was watching, I was trying to kind of get, kind of like take notes and kind of like get ideas for topics and you like I said, there's not a whole lot of attention paid to the case, really. It's a lot of characters, and I think this one is the performances carry this one.
Mm,
The the little moments here and there carry this one through. A lot of the shot and another shot that struck me was when they're at that commune or that community and when they're leaving and everyone's standing around and the trees are there and all the lights hanging from the
mm.
trees and their silhouettes and they're all wearing like these clothes, they kind of they all it just I don't know, there's so many great shots in this one.
Yeah, but it's almost like a world from another world. Like they are separated from time and culture
Yeah.
and society, and that they sort of know that, and that's actually the choice that they made. That isolation, and men will come to them and they'll make their money, and like how pathetic it is in Marty to give the girl money and say do something else as if he's saving her by giving her a few. not realizing what the issues are there, or what the background and the danger that that girl obviously came from. But he thinks he can help by, here's a bit of money, and
Yeah,
sort of placating his own guilt about not being able to do more, maybe.
maybe. Yeah. Aaron mentions lots of clutter, years of keeping it. Yeah,
Mm.
you get that too. Very a lot of clutter and kind of this like a claustrophobic almost feeling. It's the looks between Marty and Rust to the mother's responses that makes the audience take note.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. Russ does look at that. I think he looks at that photo more than once. I think he kind of glances over and then it shows us, and I think he looks at it again.
Yeah, it does. It
So
goes
he,
back. It does.
mm,
I find that it is interesting again because they're such different styles of detective. How much they do feed off each other,
mm,
and even the case where they go and find out about the location of the commune. Marty goes sits in the car, and I can't remember exactly what the line is that he says about
he,
when Rust
he
goes
know
in.
he can find weakness or something like that.
Yes, yeah. So he knows how to find weakness or whatever it was. He goes back in, and he just sits in the car, and obviously Russ goes in and sorts it out, and then picks his jacket up and says, "Right, it's down the road."
And Aaron mentions Rust down payment. Yeah,
That was a great line,
yeah.
dude.
The yeah the uh the visions. What did you think about the visions?
So, which visions? His visions, Rust's visions of the right. Okay, so the ones that I've seen. So
Yeah,
there's the obvious ones at the end where the birds are flying away, and it's the insignia or thing on her back
mm,
that you see at that stage, and then the visions in general. I mean, there's a lot of people have a lots of visions. I mean, you go to the green spaghetti monster from the first episode that they talk about, and then you talk about, Doors had one. Everybody sort of seems to have visions out in the wild. This isn't just a Rust thing. There seems to be some psychotropic or something in the air or in and around certain locations that seem to be pulling on. I don't know. It's there's definitely something about that area that lots of people are seeing lots of different things. Although Rust puts it down that he sort of feels like he's connected on a different plane to reality, which I think is a nice way of looking at madness or excusing his own actions, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of other things that came up there other than him being drawn to find the devil trap at the end of the first episode, and then that
mm,
starting the start of the second. Walking out there knowing that there's something out there. And same way as walking in the church and pulling back and realizing there's something here to
yeah,
be found. It always seems to be Rust that finds that element, in all the scenes.
yeah.
Which again might convince me that he might be the one that done it because he needs to further the thing, but there you go.
Aaron says future Rust also hints that he will tell Marty about those down the line as well. That may cause some tension.
Mm. Yeah, because Marty's not going to be believing it. He doesn't like him to open up and tell him about things that aren't very much of this world or of the things that he asked about in the first place or anything like that.
Very straight, very focused. It
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah,
Another speaking of that, another thing that struck me too is the fact that Marty, when they're in the car, Marty's talking about how it's just a crazy person that
yes,
posed her, and it kind of fits that kind of lazy detective work that I think a lot of people get caught up in, is that they don't look, they just think, oh, they're just someone's crazy, that they kind of dismiss it. They don't look at the other clues or take it, they don't expand their way of thinking, or change their way of thinking and think, well, what does it mean, instead of just, oh, it's just someone crazy.
which again is interesting. I mean, I have the line that went around that. That's again one of those long lingering lines where you kind of go, "Oh man, that's either really great writing or they're doing some." The vision is meaning is historical line
Mm,
that they had on that, and they go, "Okay, yeah, that's I can get that." And again, gets this link between the past and the future and what's going on. Um, I Oh, I the other vision that I wanted to talk about again. This was very cleverly done and cleverly shot. You had that vision or representation of Cole in front of the cross smoking. You know, everything was very hazy, and he's got the cross behind him and his head in very stark black light nature, almost like a dream kind of reality sequence. And kind of going okay. And then they cut that between Marty's kind of about the only time you ever see it is Happy Home Life with him playing with the kids in bed.
Yeah.
And they kind of cut those two things against each other, and you kind of go, oh, like again, Marty, for all of his faults, is sort of traditional and normal and has a life that many of us can recognize.
Mm.
And Coles is this unhealthy, almost what's the word that I'm looking for? Almost as if he is the fanatic, if you know what I mean, with
Mhm.
the iconography of the cross, etc., and what he goes ahead and does. So yeah. So yeah, I have Marty shows his human side, that and Rust, where he says, "I'm just not good for people,"
Mm.
and he basically seems to be punishing himself for the things in his past and the events in his past that we consider probably to be his wife and his daughter, but it turns out is other things. What is he really beating himself up over? What is his real? Um, what is he really working his way through here in totality? Which is kind of heavier weight for him.
And he mentioned something like, you know, you get to a certain age and you know who you are, and I know
Mm,
who I am. He's kind of
yeah,
like given up, and the another thing that struck me was you know, losing his child and how that must really, I mean, change your entire life. I mean, it's something you'll never, it'll always be, you know, you'll never forget about that. You know, it'll forever change you in ways that I can't even imagine.
but isn't it interesting how he rationalizes it? You know, with how the sort of beauty
Yeah.
of dying as a child does, and actually how, and again, here's a religious metaphor, how that almost saves him.
Yeah.
You know, saves him from the sins of being a father. I think is exactly the line that he says, and you go, man, that's deep,
Yeah.
but also very much in the traditional Christian kind of thing of being saved. You know, in various ways. You know, and saved from himself.
Mhm.
Just completely, like completely great character exploration to kind of go in and have somebody that's obviously been through a lot and reflected on a lot and kind of put it straight out in front of you.
You, I kind of wondered if that's a coping mechanism for him to find acceptance in what's happened, to rational, like you said, to rationalize it, into to find some kind of peace for himself. Because that if he doesn't think of it as how great for it for his daughter to have died as a 2-year-old, this happy child, rather than grow up in this, like, this meat grinder of life. I mean, you have. I mean, I would imagine you'd have to tell yourself things like that
Hmm.
to to cope, to live, to not go crazy.
I think it could be argued that he has gone crazy in a lot of ways. You know, I don't think you can be a well-adjusted individual after that kind of trauma
Yeah.
and what happens, but you do deal with it as best as you can. But it is a very powerful reflection to kind of to come in just in casual conversation. You know, just kind of, you know, I've been thinking about this and this is what I think, and you go, holy, that's a TED talk right there.
What did you think about the line of the hubris someone must have to snatch a soul out of non-existence into existence and have a
Ah,
child? I mean, that's
this is what I'm saying about this episode in general. Like, it is filled full of writing wise these really deep and thought provoking kind of bits that sit on the surface of this horrible crime, this horrible murder, and what is really throughout the whole episode a really murky representation of that world. You know, look at all the locations that they go to, all of the people that they meet. Even when Cole goes back to meet the call girl, you know, and she thinks he's there for one reason, but he's really only there for the pills. He wants to pay for the pills. He's not trying to shake her down. She offers him other things, and he's very much no, this is what I came here. And again, made me think, again, the person that is probably perpetrating this crime is probably a similar person to Rust, if not Rust himself, you know, that access to that kind of that kind of individual and befriending those kind of individuals in the same way that Dory would have been done. It's so clever. The whole thing is just so clever.
Yeah. Aaron had a couple comments. Just had to think about the titles. Lots of images mixed, not necessarily a new technique in titles, but maybe worth a closer look to see what images are mixed, almost like the visions.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well and kind of pausing and studying them, but I come away with the idea that I want to learn more about the story before I start to dissect and pull apart those images because I do feel like it'll be folly. I think
Mhm.
anybody that's designing those titles, it'll be one of those things that once you know you'll see, but before you know you'll not see. But it'd be interesting to see if somebody was able to pull something together of that because that's kind of the whole enthralling nature of it is can you be the detective that kind of
Mm,
dissects us apart as a viewer?
yeah, exactly. Aaron says, "Well, when he talks about being grateful for being spared the sins of being a father." Yeah,
What a sequence! Like Jesus, couldn't that was really mind blowing that one.
yeah. His child not being burdened with the damage done by adulthood.
Yeah.
Great scene. Yeah, it was. I mean, so yeah, those interview scenes. Uh, he thinks deeply, then deeply again. Could be driving himself to madness.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Yeah.
And Aaron has an interesting point. Watching for me is less about solving the crime now. It's about Rust and Marty's stories.
So this would be a question I have for you, actually,
Mm,
Steve, as somebody's watched this a number of times, because I do think how I'm watching this series and recording notes and really stopping and pausing and doing it leads me to solving the crime because I'm almost being the detective, and how
yeah.
I'm notating, and I'm almost Rust because I've got the ledger. I am the tax man, and how I'm recording and doing this. But as somebody that has seen this multiple times and knows what happens, it must
Mhm.
be very much the second part is the character interactions of the bit that you're really uh you're coming towards, or maybe it's not. I don't know.
No, I think so. I think it's even the first couple times I watched it, I think it was more about the case,
Hmm.
more about the crime, and now, like you said, it's more. I focus more on. I'm really surprised how character focused it is. I don't think I
Mm,
noticed it until I kind of stopped trying to figure out who did what and just watched. But it's very character. I think that's why I liked it because it's so character heavy.
yeah, it has levels. Like I think that's one of the things that makes any good
Mm,
drama book. It has those bits where it's entertaining. It has the bits where it has messages, it has theming, it has a lot of subtext, and it also has this kind of engaging character work that works for these different things work for different types of people. It's a bit like they often say about books, Steve. They say, "Are you a character person that likes character? Are you a person that likes themes? Are you a person that likes entertainment?"
mm,
And the old phrase, well, why not all three? Yeah.
mm. Yeah,
The best books. Why can I not like all three? Can we not have all three? And I suppose maybe it is one of those things that elevates great entertainment is the things that do connect to multiple levels and lead themselves to
yeah.
rereading and rewatching.
It's an interesting point too. Is I wonder because I think a lot of people try. A lot of people. I think it's hard to do all three, and I think when
Yeah.
people try it, it's difficult. So it's hard to pull off. So when you find something that, because I think it's you may have been burned before with
Mm.
something not so great because they tried to do everything and they just couldn't for whatever reason. So I think when it does happen, when it does come together, it's really special.
I think it's also one of those things that Fukunaga, who did this, directed it, wrote it. He was very much a singular creative vision, and actually that helps being able to do one of these because you do set out with a design doc at the start to say we're going to do this, and this in however many episodes that we've got, and there's not too many hands that can interfere with that and kind of get an inconsistent
Mm,
quality. Because I think if you had an inconsistent quality from episode to episode or whatever, then you would struggle. And I think like having not seen subsequent seasons, but when somebody else was coming in taking the helm of this, you maybe didn't get that to the same degree. And why you get this disconnect between the seasons where you go, why was this not as good as the season? Because like singular creative vision and directors, those people that are that talented are very very few. Like it is
yeah,
it is not an easy thing to pull off.
yeah, it's really really tough. Alicia says you pick up more things on a rewatch. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I pick up every time I watch it. I pick up something new.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And the layers are probably why it's considered such a great series. The range of viewers connected with different aspects.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm taking from it as well. Especially, there's these are hour-long episodes, but they're taking me a lot longer than an hour
Yeah, yeah,
to get through because they're so multi-layered that you just kind of go, oh, I don't want to lose that thought of that might be important or for that the link or not link going forward.
yeah. The what else stuck out to you this episode?
Oh dear. So a couple of things stuck uh, at me about it. I mean, there's a good bit of humor in this episode, both from Marty's crass humor with the finger up the ass thing.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I did actually laugh quite loud at that one. Uh, and his line about I ain't got nothing against hillbillies when they turn up in the commune, as opposed to call girls or otherwise. But a lot of the things that if I was the detective looking at this, there's a lot of through lines and a lot of bits that connect to. Well, if I was a policeman, this is where this investigation seems to be heading towards, and it's very much heading towards the church at the moment. The fact
mm,
that Dora was going to the church quite regularly, and then about like our mum, obviously, in a similar kind of thing, praying out loud, and like I always come back to the same thing of right. One, who's the unnecessary character? Who's the unnecessary character that is a really famous actor in it?
mm.
And Clark Peters in the film, I wasn't in the second episode, and he's connected to the church anyway. There's another theory of this theory for solving TV crimes as opposed to books. Who acts certain parts can certainly lead you down a way, or some people use that to their advantage to throw you off. I do like that kind of bit. Um, Dory's diary being found,
Mm. Yeah.
uh,
What were your
which
thoughts on that? I'm going to be really so. I'll just ask
so
you
there's
what you thought.
something. So more examples of LSD use while she was writing it with the Yellow King Carcosa. The interesting thing about this, and it does link to something else, there's this date and timeline of around 92, 93, right? That Cole talks about at the start. And again, maybe it's telegraphed a bit too much at the start, where she goes, the girls' school was shut down in 92 after Andrew, which I assume is a hurricane,
Mhm.
right? Does that mean anything to you? He says. And then he talks about his daughter was killed in 93 on the tricycle. And then he's then his life kind of goes off the rails at about. But the only thing I got off the diary was about the examples of the LSD use, and then this vision that is in the again. And we're just going to keep on calling it the green spaghetti monster, but
Mm.
it's another color and it's another kind of thing that ties to it. I didn't write anything else down about that though, so we'll see how that goes.
Aaron mentions hard for lightning to strike in the same place twice. And Aaron, what's the fun of cake if you can't eat it? Oh, Marty.
Again, it's lines like that. I think you're supposed to dislike him, but you also kind of go, "Oh, but you are who you are." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's a flawed individual. Oh, of another joke that I wrote down. I don't see the connection between two dead cats and the murder of a woman. But then again, I'm from Texas.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I love that line. I thought that was really, really great.
He's also had a crack about Lubbock. He talks about there's like the hospital he was in Lubbock, and
Oh yeah,
imagine the hospital being in Lubbock. Have you ever been there? And
the irony. And the
there,
psychiatric hospital being in Lubbock. Yeah. What else did I say? Oh yes, I meant to look up what a Donna Reed type was, but they had the discussion about mothers and the fact that Cole's mother may still be alive,
hmm.
and he just seems to have disavowed uh, of that whole thing. But yeah, so everything else seemed to be for me very much about finding and linking some small breadcrumbs together. Like speaking to Dory's friend Carla, and she says about the Spanish Lake, the place where she was staying, that turns into then the commune, and we find that out. And the only other thing that really struck me about that was there was a really, again, a kind of nothing thing, but they have this strong feminist argument about the judgment of men owning women because they
Mhm.
pay they're not can't pay for the sex and stuff. And I mean, again, there's another really multi-layered, deep conversation as a two lines within this episode that's about a murder of a woman. Like it just seems to be it just seems to go in so many directions and ask a lot of questions.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, and he doesn't have a comeback for that. You know,
Hmm.
he doesn't have a response for that. Aaron says, "Arm raised, you're a smartass with your mouth shut." Oh, yeah, that's right. And, yeah, when they're in the office and, he keeps telling him to shut up and he just raises his hand.
uh, it is interesting that they were put under pressure about closing this case up quickly. You know, that outside pressure.
Mhm.
And the fact that it is alluded to, because we don't really have any idea of timeline, but they've been working this case for a few weeks by this stage and have no real results from it. And actually, we don't feel any further on as an audience of
Yeah.
knowing what the hell's happening either. And you kind of go, yeah, well, I could see actually why there'd be pressure coming on here. Well, we always go, it's two detectives, but then whatever. And again, that idea, how many murders have you ever solved where you didn't catch the guy within a couple of hours or a couple of days? You know, it's true. Homicide rates would solving cases tell you that as well.
And also, they also have the clock is ticking on them now too. It
Yeah,
gives
this.
them, what, 2 weeks or something, or a
Yeah,
week, or
indeed.
yeah, it tells them you're
So
late.
that time scale to
Another
go
on a
to.
timeline. Yeah.
Yeah. So they are on the race against time. And does that mean that they end up making rash leaps or wrong judgments again? Because it's kind of intimated in the first episode that they got the wrong person for this ultimately.
It says, yeah, potential hysteria in the small community equals the case pressure. Yeah, especially with the occult aspects of the case, because especially down south and these really religious communities, that's this is right after the whole satanic panic kind of thing in the 80s, so
Mm-hmm.
it's right there with that in that time period of, ooh, it's the boogeyman kind of thing.
Yeah, well, it is one of those things that I think, again, for me as an outsider watching in, this kind of exploration of the Deep South and its religious kind of wrapper that goes around it is something that sort of happens here. I have to say, there's a like everything is the Bible's fault and everything's not the Bible's fault. You know, you use religious argument to suit when your political needs or your whatever you need to do, and I think you can feel it, some of that coming through insofar as we need to shut down this case because of this, and actually you could also just spin it. We need to investigate this because of this same thing. You can use the justification both ways,
Hmm.
and it does create this kind of interesting lens to view that side of the word through.
Mhm. The one of the other ones that I think Michelle was it Monaghan?
Yeah.
Monaghan? She's
Mm-hmm.
spectacular in this too. Her scenes with Marty, and when he calls her, even your mom thinks you're a ball buster, and the look on her face, and just, I mean, really great scenes with those two, and they're the when they're arguing and they're having this conflict. You just want like whole episodes of that.
Yeah, but again, the power of having great actors bouncing off each other, and I
Yeah,
have to say, when Marty was saying that, I was like, oh man, there's going to be another murder. There's going to be another murder.
yeah. I mean, I'll have, things you'll never say. You never say to your wife for 1,000, Alex.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Jeez. Alicia says when it comes to big cases like that, they want to look at the outside at something coming instead of looking internally, that it could possibly be someone that they know in their community. Great point.
yeah, for sure. They
It's
almost
almost,
they don't want to solve those cases in a lot of ways because actually, what are you going to find at the heart of it? Might be
yeah,
even worse than catching them.
what's happening behind closed doors, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
want to know. They don't want to face it. Glad she did take his rubbish completely lying down. Yeah, you get the feeling that she's kind of at her wit's end.
She's at her wit's end, and again, it's also heartbreaking when you actually go and see him get the kids for dinner, and you see the kind of adoration and love that the kids have for him, even though he's an ass. You know, she doesn't deserve him. She doesn't deserve that to happen to her, and you know, it's kind of so sad to kind of break down a family, especially when you kind of consider that as opposed to the fact that Rust family was taken away from him.
Hmm.
You know,
You could also, on the outside they probably look like the perfect
yeah,
family
agreed.
too. And kind of it's almost like a smaller version of this community and this what's going on in it. Like it seems like this really nice, friendly. But when you start digging into it, you start talking to people and you start learning about the history. Then it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you find all this really, really dark thing. What's really happening.
Everybody has their own lives outside of their lives,
Yeah.
or yeah, like even from Code's point of view, where he has this problem with drugs and the drowners, like he's just bought a whole bottle, and God knows how long that'll last him. You know,
Yeah, and like you already mentioned, but she tells him, "Well, you're a good-looking man," and kind of starts flirting with him, and he's like, "Not interested."
not interested indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Aaron
Right.
mentions on the toys in the position that Marty notices kids overhearing something bad. Maybe, yeah. Wouldn't that be? Yeah, I mean, that might be worth a conversation to say. It's pretty.
But in some ways, like I looked at that and expected to see something different in the toys, but it's very much about the murder of the scene that he's going to sort of
Mm,
nearly almost validates his argument in some ways that actually you can't just brush this under the carpet, come home and have a happy family. Which,
mm.
don't get me wrong, it's completely another bullshit argument, but but uh, but those kids are internalizing that in some way, and it's in the house, regardless of whether he stays away from home or brings it home. You know, it's there, it's present.
And speaking of the affair, the woman he's with, I forget her name, but the woman he's with, he tells her and he says, "Well, where were you last night?" Like, I was out with my friends, and oh well, this guy is killing lots of people, and we haven't released that information, but he's killing, indiscriminately, and you should stay home. You should,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm looking
So
for you.
he's
Yeah,
kind of trying to control her too with this whole thing.
well, literally have his cake and eat it. That's pretty much it. We're gonna bring you a present. Handcuffs.
In a bottle of whiskey or whatever
That's
it was, and
well,
handcuffs.
yeah,
Yeah.
man. What a smooth mover. I should have been taking advice from that over the years. I don't know. Doing it all wrong. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. Imagine that. Yeah, he's a character for sure, and he's um the and they also talk about the what else? Marty, his yeah, all the kid stuff with Marty really got to me. That was
Yeah.
one of the bigger things. Yeah,
Yeah, because you like Michelle Monaghan's character because you sympathize with the situation that she's in, especially with much of an idiot he is. But you also kind of appreciate that is a family unit that
yeah,
is, for all intents and purposes, to the outside world quite solid. And
yeah.
a functioning family as opposed to the dysfunction of Rust at the moment.
What did you? Another great scene, and again, just this great performances. But in the locker room, and Marty walks in, and he tells him, you might want to take a shower. You have the smell on you, and he when Marty reacts to it, he says, "Well, how dare you?" And he says, "Well, I'm not stupid, and you were in the same clothes you did yesterday, so." But that kind of speaks to Marty's arrogance and that he just isn't even trying to hide it. He's just
Yeah.
going about his life.
But it also speaks to the fact that he probably is struggling with this case a bit, with the
Mm,
heaviness of this case. It's not just the fact that he's an ass and he's been messing around so long. But I do like the fact that Rust gets under his skin by just going at him like a cop
mhm.
and actually saying, "Here's the evidence. You ain't got shit." And he has no defense at that stage. All he can do is kind of confront him and say, I'm gonna beat you.
He
He's
threatens
saying,
to break his
Vegas,
thumbs.
well, that was exactly it. There's that psychopath side of a code. A little few pounds of pressure either side. Do you want to test this out? And you go, oh, there's the hothead, and then there's the guy that's dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, and after takes his pulse, after he walks away to kind of calm down.
Oh man, so good.
I mentioned that he's a charmer for sure. Very cleverly, the older receptionist kept on side.
Mm,
Can you give me a cup of coffee? And she runs for him. He mentions the P to get a rise out of him. So many other ways he could have approached the subject. Yeah,
mm,
it's almost almost like poking him
yeah.
to get a reaction.
So yeah,
So good.
watching this is hard going to not have a million ideas and treat it as entertainment. I actually sort of feel like I should have made myself rules at the start of this, but I didn't realize it was going to be so multi-layered, like I was
Mm.
saying, and actually
The,
that it would have possibilities.
the first time you watched it, you got to which episode did you get to the
I
first time?
think about 3 or 4, but like I don't think I wasn't. Certainly wasn't even internalizing it at the level or breaking it down to the level that it was. Other than these are two interesting characters, and I kind of want to know where the case ends up.
Mm.
I think that's pretty much in the first watch all that I was kind of doing. Um, because I don't remember even the end of this episode. Like
Mm.
that's not a thing that I remember seeing or even taking notice of when I came back to it. I remember the first episode sort of reasonably well because I think I've watched that a few times to try and get back into it. But the second episode, I no memory,
Oh wow. Oh
no
cool. So
memory
it's
at
almost
all.
like the first time.
It is almost like the first time, which is really nice. Especially with all everything going on, and then I just love some of the camera work. And when that shot at the very start, when they have the top down view of the Devil's Trap, and
Mm.
then it pulls down and pans, and then you just see Rust staring at it, and then Marty coming and staring at it, and it's almost like they're held in rapture by this one object in the screen, and it's just like, oh man, it's such good camera work. It's just some people just have a talent for going, oh man, you know how to tell a story or to present a very simple, almost like stage scene, almost like a painting,
Hmm.
but actually use the movement of the camera to kind of draw your eye and kind of make you look around it a little bit. Oh,
Yeah, that's something I try to pay more attention to now is like framing and where the characters are in the frame and
yeah,
the different where the focus should be and where maybe they want you to be looking, where you would traditionally be looking for it, where maybe it's not in the center of the screen, it's somewhere else.
well, it's a bit like you said about the backdrop of the industrial, beside the church. I didn't see that this time. Didn't see it at all. And yet, I suppose when you see things multiple times and you're going,
Mm,
you start to look more at the craft
mm,
of everything that's going on, whether that in terms of story writing or whether it's in terms of how they're shooting and filming it, or the music,
yeah,
etc. that's going on.
yeah, it's
Uh,
great all the way around. You have
yeah.
anything else in your notes?
I have nothing else in my notes other than I wrote down who the last track, the final track, who it was sung by, and
Oh, what was the last track?
so Kingdom of Heaven by the 13th Floor Elevators, apparently. So I'll have to go look that up.
Hmm,
So I thought it was a pretty great track. I thought I'll have to look that up, especially since a lot of people were talking about the title track, last
oh
week,
yeah,
and I was like, first episode wasn't really cognizant of it all, that it was a tune or otherwise.
oh, such a great intro. Erin says the remoteness, anything could be happening in secret.
Yeah, the fascinating thing about that is you say the remoteness and the fact that but everything's so wide open. It's almost like everything is hiding in plain sight, a bit like that church. Like it's
Yeah,
kind of sitting by itself by the side of the river, and if anybody even went to look at it, the things you'd find.
yeah. But like you mentioned earlier, that these rundown factories that you pass them every day and you don't
Yeah,
notice them.
indeed. Yeah,
You just you don't look for them, and who's going to go off on this dirt road just to say, well, I wonder what's out here and run into
yeah,
it. So it is hiding in plain sight, and yeah, great stuff, great
yeah.
stuff.
Really great stuff. Yeah.
So I think episode 2 is. Do you have anything else? I think that was about it.
Nope. That's my notes all done. God. Phew.
Yeah. So we'll be back next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time.
Mhm.
What time is it for you in
That's 11 my time.
11 your time? Okay. We'll be back either 11 p.m. or 6 p.m. or 4 p.m. like for me, like I mountain time.
Wherever you are.
Wherever you are in the world, back the same time next week to talk about episode 3 on Chris's
Yeah,
channel.
indeed. We hand the baton
Cool.
back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love that thumbnail too. It's great stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, good stuff. So thanks everyone for coming by in the chat.
really
It always
appreciate it.
adds
Yeah.
to the experience to when you come by and hang out with us and help break it down and bring up things we don't think of or missed. So it's always a good time.
Yes, for
So
sure.
Chris, if someone wants to find you, where's the best place to find you?
So you can find me on my YouTube channel at my name. You can find me on Twitter at 7 o'clock Shadow. You can find me at the page tune forums. Getting recipes off Drew at the moment. That was today's one. I was like, right, I need to save and print.
Nice. Yeah. I have to be careful with the Drew because he makes some delicious food that I can't eat. So I have to.
Oh man, that looks so
I
good.
don't want to know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to know. But cool. Yeah. Thanks, Chris. It's always a pleasure, and we'll talk again next Wednesday for episode 3.
Yeah. See you then, indeed.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.